Every year, we honor one of our citizens for the work he or she has done in making Palm Beach County a better place to live. Last season, because of some scheduling conflicts, we were unable to present our Outstanding Public Service Award to a man who has helped mold the Glades. We are doing so today by honoring George Wedgeworth, who is represented here today by friends, family, and coworkers, and also has joined us here today. Mr. George Wedgeworth has lived in Belle Glade for 85 years and is a 1946 graduate of Belle Glade High School. He graduated with a degree in agricultural engineering from what is now Michigan State University and came home to join his mother in developing Wedgeworth Farms into 7,300 acres of cropland and over 10,000 acres of pasture. In 1960, he conceived, planned, and created the 46-member Sugarcane Growers Cooperative of Florida, which today remains the largest single employer in Belle Glade and has an economic impact of more than $285 million a year. He was named Florida Trend's Most Influential Man in 1962, the year of their first sugarcane harvest. He led the creation of the Everglades Agricultural Area Protection District, which has raised more than $110 million for research and ecosystem improvement for projects in the Everglades and Lake Okeechobee, and was named to the Florida Agriculture Hall of Fame in 1994. The University of Florida Agricultural Leadership Institute was renamed the Wedgeworth Leadership Institute in his honor, and he didn't even go to school there. In short, Mr. Wedgeworth has devoted his life to building one of the greatest economic engines Palm Beach County has ever known. If that were all to Mr. Wedgeworth, that would be a full life. As a community leader in the Glades, there is not a local school, hospital, or organization which did not receive the financial support of George and Peggy Wedgeworth and their time. He led the establishment of the Palm Beach State College Glades campus and the construction of the Dolly Hand Cultural Arts Center on that campus. He was a 40-year director of the Bank of Belle Glade. He helped found the Belle Glade Chamber of Commerce. He is a longtime trustee of the Community Methodist Church in Belle Glade, just to name a few. It is nearly impossible to find anything in Belle Glade without the graceful influence of Mr. Wedgeworth, either leading the way or working quietly behind the scenes. Dolly Hand, herself an icon in the Glades, said this about Mr. Wedgeworth: "Can you imagine what our community would look like without him?" There are many community leaders whose first name you've just always figured to be Mr., because that's all you've ever heard anyone call him. Mr. Wedgeworth is one of those men. That kind of respect is reserved only for leaders with a vision, with an overriding sense of fairness and cooperative spirit, with a determined drive and an unwavering integrity. His son, Dennis Wedgeworth, is here to accept on his father's behalf as we present the Forum Club's Outstanding Public Service Award to Mr. George Wedgeworth.
On behalf of my father, I'd like to thank you, Ed, for your kind and generous remarks. And I also would like to thank you and the rest of the board of the Forum Club for recognizing Dad with this very tremendous honor. I spoke with Dad yesterday, and he said he was extremely honored and grateful to receive this award, particularly knowing some of the past recipients of this award, such as Phil Lewis and Sidney Stubbs. He's grateful to be included amongst some of these individuals. Of course, Dad is with us here today and like to recognize you and like to say I'm part of the family that we're very proud of what you have done for us, for your community and all of Florida of agriculture. Again, thank you to the Forum Club for this award and for your very generous and thoughtful remarks. Thank you.
Each of you is sitting with a glass of water in front of you. Don't take it lightly. We haven't reached the stage yet where we have to ask if we'd like water with a meal, but that day may not be very far away unless Florida gets a handle on how to take care of its water in the future. That's what Florida Commissioner of Agriculture Adam Putnam is here to talk about with us today, the need for a long-term water policy. A Florida Gator and fifth-generation Floridian, Adam Putnam has a long political history in this state. From 1996 to 2000, he served in the Florida State House of Representatives. In 2001, he was elected to the United States Congress, holding the distinction during his first year of being the youngest member of Congress at the age of 26. He served in Congress until 2011, during which time he chaired the House Republican Policy Committee from 2006 to 2007. And for the next 3 years, he chaired the House Republican Conference. During his 5 terms in Congress, Adam was recognized as a leader in building comprehensive restoration to the Everglades, which brings us to the topic of water and the perfect time to have you join me in welcoming our Commissioner of Agriculture, Adam Putnam.
Thank you, Ed, for the introduction, and let's give the Wedgeworth family another round of applause. What an extraordinary family and what they do for Palm Beach County. I think my evil plan worked. I spread the rumor that Palm Beach's part-time resident presidential candidates, Carson and Trump, were going to thumb wrestle today, because I know that this many people aren't here to see the Ag Commissioner. The only way I get this many people in one room is to speak to the steer show at the State Fair. Ed talked about the sticker on the gas pump, and when prices are high, I run around the state putting my predecessor's stickers back on the pump, and when they start to fall, it's my sticker. So we're in a good place right now. But Lieutenant Governor, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service and your leadership. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize, I mean, if Jeff Atwater came to Bartow, I don't think I could turn out a crowd like this. Enough people in the town, but he's unfortunately stuck in Tallahassee saving us some money. He's the kind of guy that squeezes a dime and gets 3 nickels, and it just really represents the entire state very well, and particularly Palm Beach County. It is my pleasure to be able to share with you a few thoughts on the long-term challenges that I think our state faces. And key amongst them is the need for a water policy that is flexible, that is statewide in nature, and is long-term. But let's back up just a little bit and talk about what makes Florida, Florida. You know, many of you chose to come here. The Wedgeworth family's been here forever. I've been in Polk County for 5 generations, but Florida is a place that people from all over the world choose to relocate to what we get to enjoy every day. And if you've ever sat in Palm Beach Airport or Orlando Airport or Miami or any place where people are coming and going, you can see the excitement that they have when they get to our state. And when people are shoveling 9 feet of snow in Boston, like they did last winter, a good portion of them are dreaming about being on Palm Beach. They want to be able to be on the water. They want to play golf year-round. They want to wear flip-flops in February. When they're sitting in traffic in the Loop in Chicago or on that famous bridge between New Jersey and New York that we've read so much about lately, and their temples are throbbing with the blood pressure of the person that just cut them off and gave them a one-fingered wave. And they're thinking, I'm going to get to Florida someday because I've had it with the high taxes and the high stress and the low quality of life of where I am, and I'm going to reward myself with Florida. When people write that last tuition check for the last little bitty to leave the nest, and they turn to their spouse and say, the next one is for us to have a place in Florida. And many of them not only choose Florida, but choose Palm Beach County. We are the destination for ambitious entrepreneurial people who have found success in many places around the world. They've worked hard, they've built a business, they've saved their money, they've raised their families, and the prize that they give themselves is what we get every day. Now, when they're shoveling snow and when they're sitting in traffic and when they're dreaming about Florida, Florida's water policy is not exactly part of that dream. How we raise standards in our schools isn't part of the fantasy that they're building up in their mind. How many lanes we can take 95 to isn't a part of that thought process. So it's on us to get it right so that we protect the integrity of that dream so that they don't have to worry about those things. Infrastructure, water policy, education, those are the long-term issues that have to be our focus to protect the prize that Florida has become for much of the world. Now, here in Palm Beach County, you are the envy of most economic development councils and professionals and chambers around the state. You have a global brand. You're a global destination of choice for tourism, for investment. You're stealing hedge funds left and right from all over the world. De Blasio's the gift that keeps on giving to Palm Beach County and to the rest of the state. You have Pratt, you have Sikorsky, you've got Max Planck, you've got Scripps. Most people would give their left arm to get one of those things. But let me just take 1 second and remind you of something that is also here, that has been here since day one, and it has grown with the tourism industry, even as Flagler needed people to be able to put food on the tables of the high-end hotels, and that is you have an agricultural industry west of the Turnpike that is the top 10 ag-producing counties in the nation. Now in Bartow, we drink wine out of screw-top bottles, but I bet that you'll recognize in Palm Beach other county names like Napa and Sonoma. That's the list that you're on for your agricultural industry. 4 of your top 5 employers are agricultural employers. It is a vital, prosperous, profitable, and sustainable economic pillar, even as we all work to diversify our economy, to bring in manufacturing and financial services and build on the life sciences. At the end of the day, it is pretty special that we are the global epicenter of winter vegetable production. It's not very glamorous, it's not very sexy, but it is a $20 billion economic impact to your county. Now, all of us who share this dream of what Florida is and what Florida can be have an affinity for water. The people who are dreaming about Florida are thinking about the amenities that Florida has, and while people from all over the world come here, and while as Floridians, in our diversity, we don't really share a common identity as Floridians. You know, you go to Texas, you land at the airport, you get a cab, the cabbie's wearing cowboy boots, a big buckle, and a hat, and you say, "How long have you lived in Texas?" And he said, "About 3 weeks." In a state like ours that doesn't really have that common identity, the closest thing to it is our common connection to the water. The Gulf, the Atlantic, our Everglades, our springs, our rivers, our lakes. Ask a realtor what it means to be on or near the water. Water is the biggest long-term issue facing our state. On average, we face a 1 billion gallon per day shortfall by 2030 if we don't start now to get it right. The Orlando metro area alone faces a 250 million gallon per day shortfall by 2030. We have to do better about capturing and storing the water that we get, because on average we get 55 inches of rain. But if you've been here more than a couple of years, you know that there's nothing average about Florida. Some years we get 4 hurricanes. And some years half the state is on fire, like in 1998, when the drought conditions were so bad that I-95, I-10, and I-4 were closed, the Firecracker 400 was canceled, and Disney closed for a day. Now, the issue about water is that you have to fix it before it's a problem. Now, that runs counter to most politicians' aims because they want credit for the problem that they solve, but when it comes to something important like water, if we get to the point where we're in conflict, it's too late and we look like California. And they've lost billions in economic impact because they didn't get it right. So water supply planning means that there'll be enough for agriculture. It means that there'll be enough for 100 million visitors. It means that there'll be enough for 800 new residents per day, plus the 20 million who are already here, and protecting the environment, which is key to why people want to be here in the first place. That's what water supply planning looks like. It means we store it. Shallow water reservoirs, deep water reservoirs. It means we get out of the habit of using water only once. We stop doing dumb things like using virgin groundwater for industrial purposes when we can connect municipal wastewater to those same industrial processes. We use reclaimed water. We stop discharging 1 billion gallons a day to tide. The Lord has given us a lot of water, Pastor. We need to use it more wisely. And then water quality. Water quality has to be a part of it because that is who we are. Who wants to sun themselves on fouled beaches? Who wants to have the cloudy water where you can't see that sand dollar at your feet? Who wants to go to the Keys if you can't snorkel the reefs? We all grew up watching the redfish tail and catching the snook and watching the sailfish jump over on this side of the state, catching the bass in our lakes, watching the big gators sun themselves in our springs and our rivers. That is as much of who Florida is as the Everglades are. And all of it is important. And to preserve that and to sustain that is to build on a stewardship ethic that all of us have a role to play in. Homeowners have a role to play in buying the very reasonably priced sensors so that you're not driving down your neighborhood at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we're getting a 1-inch rain and half of your neighbor's sprinkler systems are also on. We've all been there. And it's not because people are deliberately wasting their water, it's because their 13-year-old hasn't taught them how to adjust the timer. This isn't rocket science. This is eminently solvable. We all want to do the right thing. Sarasota County, Florida has the lowest per capita usage of water in the state, and it doesn't look like Scottsdale. We can have lush lawns and great golf courses and conserve water. We can apply these reclamation techniques. We can capture what we have, and we can be successful at this. One of the things that we have to change in our mindset, though, is the importance of water infrastructure. None of us bat an eye at the cost and the need to add additional lanes, or how much the price of a new interchange has risen to, and what a new bridge to the island is going to cost, even though it's a nightmare to get across there right now. We've all internalized mentally what surface transportation infrastructure costs. We've got to accept that in many cases, the best thing that we can do for our environment and for our economy is also to invest in water infrastructure. That means fixing broken septic systems that in many cases are responsible for 70% of the nutrient load in the Indian River Lagoon. It means the infrastructure that's got to go in around Lake Okeechobee, because the Corps of Engineers is not going to hold those lake levels where they should be to prevent the harmful discharges if they're worried that the dike's not going to hold, particularly in a post-Katrina mindset. And so we have to have the federal infrastructure and the state infrastructure to fix Lake O, which is the beating heart of the Everglades and the urban water supply for 8 million people, and key to what makes South Florida, and is vital to the agricultural and the reservation needs south of the lake as well. We all know also which direction things flow, and that means that the northern Everglades are also important because water flows into Lake Okeechobee at 4 times the rate that it can be discharged. So if there are heavy rains in Orlando, South Florida is going to pick up whatever that water picks up and brings with it. Some of it is more pleasant than others. And so having an attention to the northern Everglades as well as those parts of the Everglades that we've traditionally considered the Everglades in the EAA and everything south of the lake. We're all in this thing together. We are all in this together, and making sure that we approach this from a statewide perspective is important. You see, the hang-up to a statewide water policy has always been that different parts of the state said, that's not my problem. That's somebody else's problem. Let Miami worry about that. Let Tampa worry about that. But ladies and gentlemen, there is not a part of our state right now that is not in some form of conflict over water, even though we've been fortunate to have a rainy season. Apalachicola Bay in the Florida Panhandle, home of the greatest oysters on the planet. It's in a collapse. It's not in an economic and ecological collapse because Franklin County overbuilt condos. The population of Franklin County could fit in this room. It is a distinct consequence of failed water policy flowing in from Georgia, and it starts in the city of Atlanta. It's a multi-state conflict. But that's not the only part of the state. The Swanee Valley in Florida's Big Bend, again, not a consequence of too many developments in Perry, in Levy, Dixie, and Gilchrist counties. No, it's because of the withdrawals moving around the state to support urban areas. We all have a role to play in fixing this issue. Water supply development, water quality issues, because this will dictate our future. How can you recruit new manufacturing here for a water-intensive process if they don't know if they're going to get their allocation? How do we support a $100 billion ag industry if we don't know if we're going to have enough water to support a crop? How do we support new subdivisions, new golf courses, new resorts? It's in no one's best interest to fight over the size of our piece of the water pie. The answer is to grow the water pie to achieve the quality of life and the level of growth and development for today's industries and tomorrow's industries and for future generations of Floridians. And now is the time to do that because politicians typically do 2 things very well: nothing and overreact. And now is the time to get our water policy right precisely because we are in a fairly normal rainy period. We wouldn't get a good water policy if we were trying to draft it in 2004 after 4 hurricanes had just devastated the state. And we wouldn't get a particularly good one if we were trying to draft it in the aftermath of the 1998 fire season, which was the most devastating that we had seen in modern history. You do this type of long-term planning when you're not overreacting, when you're not responding to some great calamity, but you have an opportunity to do it thoughtfully and sincerely and put all the right people at the table so that we're not pitting urban utilities against agriculture, and we're not pitting North Florida against South Florida, and we're not pitting the interior against the coast. We're recognizing that this is key to our future growth, development, and quality of life as a state. I don't want us to turn into what California has become, where they are in constant conflict, one industry against another, one county versus another, the cities versus the county, Northern California against Southern California. Agriculture has an enormous role to play in this as well, and it has. In fact, because of the best management practices that ag's adopted on their own, 12 billion gallons per year less water is being used in the ag industry, and it is no longer the top water user in the state. It's been overtaken by urban. But we're all in this thing together, because I'm smart enough to recognize that if we're fighting over water, ag's going to lose first, and ag's going to lose the most. People are going to win every time. But to preserve the dream, the prize that is Florida, for people from all over the world, this is the kind of issue that we have to be bold about and be willing to tackle before it reaches the crisis stage. I'm looking forward to representing our state in Israel in October at a water policy conference, because much of the technology that we've adopted originated there. And we have a great story to tell about how we're deploying that technology, and we're using the relationships, the business connections between our state and their country to continue to get better at using less water in our yards, on our farms, in our industrial processes, so that when people are shoveling the snow and sitting in the traffic and waiting for that commuter train, and they're thinking about getting a taste of what we get every day, they'll know that we will be able to fulfill their expectations. This is a cornerstone issue for us. Education investment is a cornerstone issue for us. It's not enough for us to be competitive to lure new jobs here by simply being the lowest cost state. We want executives to know that their children will have a world-class education opportunity when they get here. That we will have a talent pipeline that starts at early childhood, runs through a workforce development in our state colleges, and ends with premier higher education institutions. Those things are happening now in our state. When I grew up in Bartow, there was Bartow Elementary, Bartow Junior High, and Bartow High School. There wasn't a whole lot of options. There was no customization of education. When my daughter reached the end of middle school, there were 5 high school principals, public high school principals, there to recruit those kids to their school. Your child has an interest in the arts, we have a pathway for you. Your child has an interest in math and science and STEM, we have a pathway for you. Your child wants a traditional experience, we have a pathway for you. This is the most sophisticated group of young people that has ever walked the planet. We have to customize their educational experience and give parents and students the options and the high standards that they will need, that they deserve, and that will be required of them, because Pahokie's not competing with Belglade Central for jobs. These kids are competing with people halfway around the world that they will never meet, who with a keystroke could take a contract away from them, add value, detract value, get them hired, get them fired. This is a fully integrated global economy. And as Floridians, we have opportunities to continue to build on that cornerstone issue in education. But water is what I was called here to talk about. And I can't emphasize enough that for our future quality of life and for our future economic opportunity, we have to make the investment and the policy calls to get that policy right. We have the opportunity of a lifetime to create a magnet for Florida. We know that bright, successful people are going to end up in Florida at some point in their life. We want them 5 decades sooner. We want them to build their business here, raise their family here, be emotionally invested in the long-term good of Florida, and what you're doing in your community and what we're attempting to do at the state level will allow that to happen. I ask for your continued support for us to continue to fight to get that water policy on the books, fund it, make the infrastructure possible, because it is all about growth, development, and stewardship of protecting the prize that is the Sunshine State. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you.
Thank you, Commissioner. To start, we always have our students with the first questions. Unfortunately, you have that 3 times over today, so you will have 3 questions from the students. Let's start with students from Glades Day School. First question.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm Maddie Mills, president of the Glades Day School FFA chapter. And my question is, in your opinion, how will reestablishing diplomatic relations with Cuba affect agriculture in Florida, and more specifically, Palm Beach County?
What a great question. So the administration has already approved a regular ferry service between Florida and Cuba. And there are a whole host of issues that go with that in terms of the impact on tourism, the impact on trade, the politics of it, and whether Congress would change the embargo status. But with regard to the agricultural piece that was your question, right now in Miami, we have an 85 square mile quarantine because of a fruit fly that is devastating the agricultural economy down there. We know that it came into this country through our seaport. We are constantly dealing with different invasive pests. We don't know, because Cuba's been dark for so long, we don't exactly know how many of the pests that we're fighting to keep out or that we're fighting to eradicate in Florida are established or endemic in Cuba. So it is very important to me that we have a better understanding of what they have that we don't want, and that we have a protocol in place to prevent that increase in travel between there and here, to increase our risk of introducing something that will threaten our citrus industry, our sugar industry, our vegetable industry, all the things that we're dealing with, frankly, right now in Miami. And so science has to be our guide. We have to be vigilant about it, but when these things get loose, it's the taxpayers of Florida who pick up the tab, and it's our economy that suffers. And so those are the things that are front and center in my mind that we need to be aware of as the administration moves forward. That is certainly an unintended consequence that we need to prepare for. Thank you for that great question.
If a member of the audience has a question, please, on a card, please raise it, and one of our volunteers will come and pick it up. The second question is coming from Pahokee Middle Senior High School.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Stephanie Hernandez. My question is, do you think the global climate change will have an effect on agriculture in Florida? And if so, what would these effects be, and what steps can we take to ensure the agriculture industry remains healthy?
Another tough question. Thank you, Stephanie. You told me when we took a picture that you're going to go easy on me. As those temperatures shift, it clearly will have an impact on agricultural productivity. It may benefit. I mean, you know, there would be areas that maybe are less productive today that may be more so, and others that are more so that may be less so. I mean, that is an unknown at this time, the degree to which it will impact agricultural productivity, and who will be the winners and who will be the losers of that shift in precipitation patterns, temperature, the whole 9 yards. But it is not all a losing game. Someone is likely to benefit from that shift in temperature or precipitation that may become more productive than they are today, and we just don't know. Now, the other piece of that is how important it is for us to understand how agricultural productivity is going to play a role in global stability. There will be 10 billion mouths on Earth by 2050. On top of that, the growing middle class in Brazil, India, and China, and other parts of the developing world means that the first thing that changes when their income changes is their diet. So they add protein, they add fruit, they add nuts to their diet. Only American agricultural productivity will be able to meet that population growth and the shift in diet, because if we don't meet the needs of that society, mankind's going to take a break from the last 200 years of conflict over ideology and go back to what mankind fought about for 10,000 years, which is land, water, and food. And so all of these things are important, whether it's because of climate or civil unrest or shifts in government. We better find a way to feed the planet. And the way that we will feed the planet are the kinds of productivity gains that have come from the technology leaps made possible in the United States.
And our final student question is from Glade Central High School.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Carlos Albor, and I would like to begin this by saying on behalf of all of us, we thank you for coming here and talking with us. My question is regarding on skimmers. Your CEO is on several gas pumps, and I would like to know if the regulations are on good effect, and how is it that it does good towards regulating and stopping all these criminal actions with skimmers.
Thank you. In addition to being Commissioner of Agriculture, we also responsible for consumer services, and one of those things includes, we joked about the sticker on the gas pump, but it includes this new scam, which is that criminals will open up the panel of the gas pump, install relatively inexpensive technology, and when you swipe your card at the pump, they're stealing your numbers. They're stealing your information. So when you fill up, make sure that cabinet's not open or hadn't been pried open. Look for that security tape. Do not use a debit card at the gas pump. Use your credit card at the gas pump because it gives you another layer of protection. Try to use a pump that's in a good line of sight with the clerk inside, because we find the skimmers typically on the outlying pumps that are harder for people to watch. Unfortunately, Bluetooth technology now doesn't even require the criminal to come back and retrieve the equipment. They can come back, pretend to be filling up their own car, download what that skimmer has stolen from all of you. Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties are our three highest counties for the number of skimmers that we have found, but this does afflict everyone. And the convenience store operators have responded very well in increasing the level of security. It used to be that having a key to a gas pump was like having a key to a Coke machine. If you had a key to one, you had a key to all of them. And that's obviously a dumb idea, so that's changing. And having the clerk go out there and actually physically check every pump every day is another way that we're getting our arms around it, and then prosecuting the ones that we're catching.
Thank you, students. From our attendees, much of what we grow in Florida is reliant on labor, and labor shortages are a problem. What kind of sensible immigration reform would alleviate this problem in Florida?
First of all, sensible immigration reform is probably in the eye of the beholder in D.C. right now, but here's my version of what sensible immigration reform looks like. Sensible immigration reform means that we have a strong, secure border. In places, that means a wall and a fence, but in places, it doesn't necessarily mean that. If we can read a license plate on a Land Cruiser in the mountains of Afghanistan from space, then there are probably better ways to patrol our border and secure our border than simply building a 5-strand barbed wire fence or a wall. There are places where you need that, but not everywhere. Other technologies are available. There's more technology in my child's library card than there is in your passport. I mean, you think you come back in, that guy's with a rubber ink stamp and a piece of paper. In the elementary school, there's not even a librarian anymore. You go pull the book, you take it to the counter, you pull out the ray gun, you shoot the barcode, it spits out a receipt that tells you when it's due. And the computer knows exactly which child checked out which book and when it's supposed to be back. We're not using technology very smartly when it comes to this. On the visa side, on legal immigration, our nation's immigration laws read like an odd history of America. A higher quota for Asians to complete the Transcontinental Railroad. Oh, railroad's finished, let's shrink that back down. We want to defeat the Soviet Union. If you're from an Eastern Bloc state, if you're from East Germany, if you're from Poland, if you're from Yugoslavia, you go in the express lane. Some of those things have been cleaned up over time, many of them have not. We have an express lane for baseball players from the Dominican Republic. We have an express lane for Disney employees who are going to go to the Epcot Center. We have an express lane for supermodels. That one's probably okay. We have... And then at both ends of the workforce, we're just not smart about it. So if you come to FAU and you get your degree and you want to stay here and get a master's, and maybe you want to go someplace else or stay right here and get a PhD in electrical engineering, and you're just about to start earning money and paying taxes, that's when we kick you out of the country. So we give people a diploma, and then we give them a plane ticket out of here to leave. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And at the opposite end of the workforce, we have needs in agriculture, in hospitality and tourism, and in construction that have to be filled. So we need a legal immigration system that's breathable. It shouldn't require an act of Congress to change the quota numbers for Microsoft engineers or for construction workers or healthcare workers. That ought to breathe. So if the economy's on fire, it opens up a little bit. The economy shrinks, so does the quota system. So that dynamic approach run by someone like Department of Commerce makes sense. And when you have the opportunity for people to have a legal visa to be here, particularly in agriculture, for a short period of time, to be a guest worker, to perform a task, and then go back home for a period of time and take that money back with you and help build up your hometown, wherever that may be, and then know that you're going to be able to come back in at the beginning of the next season, that's going to be very important. Because most American families aren't sitting around their kitchen table saying, boy, I really hope that you're going to pick tomatoes again this year. It's not an aspiration, nor should it be, but we better have that labor, or we're going to be as dependent on foreign countries for our food as we are for our fuel. And none of us wants to do that. And so those pieces, the border security, a better, smarter, more modern, legal pathway to get here. And when you create that legal pathway for people to get here, then it begins to whittle away at the ones who are already here illegally. And for those who are already here illegally, in my opinion, there ought to be a way that they pay a fine as punishment for entering the country illegally and earn some type of status. Not citizenship, but legal status, assuming that they haven't committed any other crime than the crime of entering the country illegally. In my view, that is a three-step approach that is sensible, that is balanced, and meets the needs of the low end of the workforce and the high end of the workforce for us to continue to grow and prosper as a nation.
Commissioner, can you talk a little bit about fracking in Florida and whether there is a need for a statewide ban on fracking to protect our waters?
There's a need for a statewide policy on fracking in Florida. We don't have one. And it's probably, with oil prices where they are and the glut of shale coming out of the Dakotas and the Shreveport area, this is less of a pressing issue. But this is another example where, don't we want to get ahead of this? Don't we want to have a set of rules so that when people come to Florida and say, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this, that we've already thought about when the answer will be no and when the answer will be yes and what they will be required to divulge to the public about the chemicals that they use? I mean, it seems to me that we shouldn't wait until there are applications piling up on DEP's desk to do that before we have a plan on how we would handle that application. There are two energy-producing areas in Florida. One in the Panhandle, a little town called Jay, that is a producing area, and then another area called the Sunnyland area near Felda on the western side of the Everglades. And they are producing using traditional drilling techniques. They don't produce a whole lot, but they do produce. And when prices were higher, there was significant interest in using new and improved traditional techniques, not fracking, but improved horizontal drilling and things like that to unlock areas that had not been unlocked before. In other words, expanding what was already going on onshore in the state of Florida. Undoubtedly, there will be those, when prices change and the business models adjust, there will be those who see an opportunity in Florida to use the fracking technology, and I think we ought to be prepared for that and have a process in place that evaluates when it is a good idea and when it is not a good idea. So yes, we do need a policy on that.
Has your youthful appearance ever caused you any challenges in Washington or Tallahassee?
Oh man, I could write a book on that. I've been thrown off the House floor, thrown off the members' elevator. You know, the first day on the job, I'm climbing the steps of the Capitol. I'm about to be sworn in so the east front of the U.S. Capitol. Those steps are worn from 200 years of men and women going up them, and I had butterflies. I'd paused at the top of the stairs to kind of take it all in. You know, I was in an FFA jacket not too many years before. Here I was on the steps of the Capitol. And they give every member of Congress this lapel pin. So I'm standing there just kind of taking it all in, about to go be sworn in. And this Capitol police officer grabs me by the shoulder and puts his other hand on my pin. And he said, "Where'd you get that pin, son?" I said, "I worked real hard to get that pin. It cost me $2 million to get that pin in that campaign." He said, "Oh, I'm very sorry. You must be that new kid from Florida that we've been hearing about." That's just one of many examples, but most of the time you can sneak up on people with your youthful appearance. So that's things for the students from Belle Glade and Pahokee to look forward to.
Why are gas stations allowed to charge a higher price for credit cards versus cash payment? I'm not going to tell people what they can charge or what they can't charge. If you know, gas pumps are the most transparent commodity there is. I mean, more people know what gas costs than know what milk costs. I mean, you ride up and down the road, and how many of you will drive past 3 of them to save a penny? I mean, this is not an unaware consumer in gas. We'll all do it. I mean, I'll drive across town to save 2 pennies. I don't know how much gas I burned to get there, but by golly, I'm going to save 2 pennies. So I'm more concerned that I'm actually going to save 2 pennies. I don't want to find out after the fact that they haven't gotten around to changing the sign, but they have gotten around to changing their rate. That's misleading. But if a business wants to offer you a discount for being a member of their club, for having a key fob that you hang from your keychain, that's between you and the business, and government's got plenty to worry about without worrying about that. Is a new dike for Lake Okeechobee part of a long-term water plan in Florida?
It is. I mean, when I say a new dike, what I mean is a reinforced dike. It's going to have to be, but we've got to figure out a better way than what we've done so far. We as taxpayers, all of us we, including taxpayers from Alaska and Iowa and everywhere else, we have spent $600 million to fix 26 miles. Well, Lake Okeechobee's got a lot bigger circumference than 26 miles. So we've got a long way to go. It's a very, very expensive technology that they have used for that first phase. They're slicing down into the middle of that earthen bank, pouring concrete substantially below and at a certain width, and they started with the areas that they thought were the most vulnerable. Unfortunately, the Corps of Engineers being engineers, until it's 100% complete, they will view that as being 0% complete, because there will always be some segment of the dike that is not yet repaired. The consequences to all of us for that is that they will not hold back that water even if it is substantially complete. So from an engineering standpoint, that means those discharges are going to continue even when we have a normal rainy season, and that's bad. It also means that when we have a drought, there's not as much already there in that storage when we need it. And then the politics of it are that as long as the Herbert Hoover Dike is one of the 10 worst dikes in America, it's probably going to be funded by Congress. When it becomes number 11, when it's the 11th worst dike in America, there's not going to be any money. And that will leave us in this purgatory of a not yet finished rehabilitation program, which means they're not going to fully utilize the storage capacity of that lake. And we're never going to get the funding because now there are 10 other dikes around America that are more dangerous than that one. And that's unacceptable. And that's why we need to continue to demand that they finish the job of protecting that dike, solidifying it so that we can have the water when we need it and stop the releases when we don't have to be releasing the volume or the timing that we are today.
Before we get to our last question, on behalf of the Forum Club, we'd like to give you this engraved coffee mug.
Hey, thank you.
And when you use it, think of the precious Florida water that you might have in there.
Right.
Students, after this question, please come up and get your picture taken with the commissioner. Last question. Commissioner, we're going to play which one of these is most likely to happen? Number one, Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president. Number two, Florida beats favored Tennessee in the swamp this Saturday. Number three, Adam Putnam is sworn in as governor of the state of Florida in January of 2019. And number four, Dr. Dennis Gallen wins Celebrity Dancing with the Stars in 2017. Which of those is most likely to happen?
Well, I've never seen his moves, but I'm willing to say that the Gators are going to squeak it out against Tennessee on Saturday. Go Gators!
Thank you, Commissioner. Please
Thank you all
join
very
us
much.
across the street on October 30th. Have a wonderful afternoon.